3, 1, 6, 5, 6, 8, 7. Yeah, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming to our cluster/discipline event for Applied Linguistics, TESOL, languages. Is there anything else? No, that's it. Okay, all right. And this is just going to be a smallish showcase of the sorts of things we're currently involved in. Both, although we're presenting individual projects sometimes, a lot of the projects we're all in together anyway. We're collaborating with each other quite a lot. So on some occasions, people won't mention all of the projects because someone else will have already mentioned them. So should we have a format where after each person speaks, people can just ask questions informally? Or do you want to wait till the end? Or you want to wait till the end? Well, that's not a real yarning circle then. But anyway, okay. All right. So we'll wait till the end if you can remember. If it's a burning question, I don't mind if you just want to ask something as we go along, then it's probably best before you forget it. So, okay, now, how do I do it? Right. Here we go. Right, so I'll do the acknowledgement of country and I'll just stand up to do that. So we'd just like to, before we start, respectfully acknowledge the past and present traditional owners of this land on which our projects have largely been conducted, although some have been done overseas as well. We respect the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and it's our privilege to have been able to conduct our research on land which is and always will be Noongar country. So first up, I think, is nobody.
That's me.
Oh, you're doing right.
Sorry, I'm just going to, the microphone. So I'm just going to share some of the more recent projects that I've been doing with my colleagues in the discipline because I've already presented on my PhD work, which is, I guess, my most significant bit of work to date. I'll focus today on the work I've been doing during my ASP and the work that I'm currently doing. So on the screen at the moment you can see, and Tony probably might like to introduce this project. So this is a project Tony's been running since 2018 at Queen's Park. Are we supposed to? No, at a local primary school. Did you want to add to that?
My guest.
Okay. So this year we started working with one of the teachers there, and it's a very multilingual, multicultural class setting. So the work that we did, you can see on the screen. So the things that look like dream catchers, language network maps. So around the edge, the students put the places that they go to, like the playground, to their family's house, that sort of thing, and the different coloured strings were the different languages they spoke. So they connected that to the places that they went, and it gave us a sense of where they're using their different languages. And in the middle circle there is a language portrait, so that we asked students to colour in how they sort of see themselves culturally and linguistically. And you can see there on the side there's a bit of a diagram with the languages that this student spoke, including cat language, so they're a little bit inventive. So we currently have written 2 articles from that during her ASP, and then also an article there for Education Matters, so talking about the challenges of superdiversity for classrooms these days. This is some work also during ASP that I've completed with Rhonda. So the first, you can see the English classes call. So we did an analysis of policy regarding Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages and ELD learners in the classroom, as well as media representations of languages and culture in English. And that was a particularly pertinent example because a professor from ANU was interviewed and said students must be taught in their home languages, and the title became English Classes Call. So it doesn't at all represent what was actually said, and so we sort of analysed the impact that that has on educational policy and discourses surrounding it. And then the second example was a chapter that we did in one of Senda's books that will be coming out in 2025 on linguistic prejudice, and again looking through critical race theory about how I guess policies and structures within schools can act to essentially discriminate against speakers of particular languages. And then most recently, and at the moment, working on this with Senda and Anna, and we made a submission to the Australian Universities Accord about international students in higher education and advocating for, I guess, some more socially just ways of how they're treated in this current system. We sent that also off to Times Higher Education, and then we have an article that we're in the process of writing at the moment that I can't read the title. Where is it? English medium instruction or exploitive modes of income. So investigating that. Thank you.
I've got the clicker. Oh, that's all right. It's okay here. Thank you. Julian. Oh, yeah. Okay, next up is me. So I'm a kind of like visual person, so I like to use a concept map to help me visualize my, different side of, research terrains, also paint a picture, overall picture of the connection across and between them. So on the upper left-hand side in me is the techie side of me. So, yeah, I got multiple identities here. So I'm an educational applied linguist. I'm also a VR gamer or researcher, if you want to call it, and also a practitioner. I'm also an advocate for LGBTQIA+ community research and pedagogy. So the techie side of me is that on the cusp of 2022-2023, I published my first monograph in through Rollage. So demonstrating and documenting how tasks could be operationalized in a 3D virtual world, especially enabling, language learners, not just English language learners, but all kinds of language learners to perform the real-life tasks that are usually very hard to conduct in the real-life setting, especially within the classroom walls, but also to enable them to perform, to use language for communicative, meaningful, and authentic purposes. And so it has been quite well received and also reviewed by my colleague in Japan in TESOL region. And so because we are along the line of this research, so Gwen and I also secure HDR scholarship, grant funding to support a new PhD student called Luna. I don't know if she's here, to work on a new project transforming language education through game-based IVR, meaning immersive virtual reality. So that's techie side of me. So on the other side, you can see queer inside of me. This one actually holds a special place in my heart and very close to my heart. So I think 2 and 3 years ago, thanks to Cindy, I met Bree through LightTech and also several like-minded colleagues and also queer academics at Murdoch, ECU, in health sciences, and other disciplines. We try to establish a project, and thanks to Rachel, we got a Curtin Academy grant, small grant, to establish a website called Queer Tears. So we try to develop and create different case studies and also resources for pre-service teachers or in-service teachers who are keen to adapt or to try out this kind of querying pedagogy in schooling and using queer theory also in the critical theory to contest and challenge this kind of heteronormative or cisgender, normative kind of model in schooling. So to bring inclusion, gender diversity, and also equity in schooling, in education. So we also got another grant through TESOL, Humanities, to help us develop an LRC project maybe next year. So this grant also helped us to get some kind of attention from medical school. So medical school, I think in the discipline of pharmacy, several academics approached us to also develop a grant project to co-design a health science curriculum with students to foster inclusion, diversity, and belonging in a unit, which I think is fantastic. By the way, you can see the little bee flying there because I try to channel Sonia, who is our queen of sustainability, who likes to use the term cross-pollination. So it's like a cross-pollination research that through Cindy, I met Bree and other colleagues. So another research cross-pollination is through Sally. So we've been, as I think Tony and I and also other colleagues, been working on this longitudinal community engagement and building kind of a project, partnering with the City of Canyon, and also we got a funding from Lottery West in response to COVID, recovery. So this project has been ongoing for like 2 or 3 years, and it just finished this year. But I think probably Sally will tell more about it when she presents in her discipline showcase presentation. But I just want to say that it opens my eyes to this kind of you really had to get your hands very dirty. You had to visit the site so many times to talk to, and not just talk to migrant community members, you had to listen to them as well, really listen to them. So I think that this project helped me to, again, ground my research, being a real, rigorous and true qualitative, researcher. So moving on to the other side, I think the final dimensions to bring humanity, peace, equity, and plurilingualism into the center of the map. So, so currently I'm working with my colleagues from University of Maryland, where I graduated from, in the States, and also from University of Georgia. We're editing a book looking at how we could empower and give voice back to transnational academics, especially in the global South kind of space. And so inviting them to share their stories about how they probably rise to the occasion to challenge this kind of Eurocentric, monolingual, and also neoliberal kind of model that actually marginalizes plurilingualism and multiculturalism. So this book has been we secured a contract with Bloomsbury. So hopefully this book will come in press next year. So because it's impossible to put all the related articles, research outputs in this one small slide. So if you're interested, you can actually scan this QR code. You can see all the full list of my publication. This is my research, not in 5 minutes. Hope.
I'm just going to stay sitting here. Oh, sorry, stay sitting here. Just a few projects that I've mentioned here, actually, because as I said, we overlap with a lot. So I've been working with Julian, Carly, Sandra, just about everybody here, actually. I've involved in projects, so I won't go over things I'm involved there. But one of the main thrusts of the work that I do is, as you can see from the name of that book, which is not my book, but which I had a chapter in along with Paul and let's see, who else is here? Steph, who's not here, and another Paul, and also a teacher at the same school that Carla was talking about before. So we had a chapter in a book, and we're very much looking at, as Carla explained, translanguaging in primary schools. Actually, at the moment, it is only one primary school, but we'd like to look at it in more. So that's one sort of strand to what I do. The other area that I've been looking at or working on at the moment is looking at this whole notion of what is culturally and linguistically diverse. What does it actually mean? Trying to unpack that label that seems to be just bandied around the place all the time. And in that project, I've been talking at length and in quite in depth to people from especially the local community about how they feel about being called culturally and linguistically diverse, and had some very interesting conversations actually, sort of varying from people being very happy to be labelled that to others saying no, they think it's divisive, but at the same time homogenising, but also very much othering and us and them kind of notions. So that's still in progress, yet to be submitted, but will be submitted in the next few weeks. Another project, and the projects here have sort of been going on for a while. They sort of started with RISP grants and SLATE grants and all kinds of internal funding, and just seem to have got momentum and keep going, even though a lot of them are not funded anymore. But one of those is the project that I did with colleagues here, Sandra, I think she's the only one here right now, and that was looking at the use of translanguaging on Bentley campus, but also in particular the project's now taken the direction of looking at our Mauritius data and working with two very lovely academics at Mauritius to actually at the moment for them to do conference presentations, but also they've published chapters in books along with Sandra and I as well. And part of that, the Bentley side of that project, you can see, was published in TESOL Quarterly. I think it was earlier this year, or was it last year? Oh, yeah, this year. And that's just that, the Bentley arm there, so looking at English-only mandates or mantras on this campus as well as Mauritius. Now the last few are the ones I'm sort of most excited about in a way, mainly because I'm not leading any of them, so it's quite nice to have other people leading me. And these have been done through the Curtin Academy mentoring sort of, it's like a scheme, and I'm a Curtin Academy executive member, so I'm sort of in charge of mentoring some of these things, but also collaborating. And they're mostly working with School of Population Health and also School of Business. And as you can see from the titles, very interesting because we're working with First Nations peoples as well, academics on campus, to look at retention and cultural safety and well-being of Aboriginal students. This particular project is just looking at this health sciences and also School of Education. And then the other two, again, the one below is also looking at the way that Aboriginal perspectives are being represented in business. And it's a really interesting one because they're trying to see how when students go out and do their projects and things, if they're taking into account other perspectives other than, you know, the dominant one, if you like. And then finally, this project that I'm involved with is looking at more to do with communication skills courses that are run for international students to see if these actually work and if they help them in any way to tackle all the challenges that they have when they come and work at Curtin, study at Curtin, sorry. I just want to mention actually, because I haven't written the names there, but the first project is being led by Rowena Lobo and Takeshi Hamashua, Elizabeth Noonan, John Bullam and Lily Wilson are involved in that, as well as myself. The second project has been led by Marcella Mores, Marnus Hall, Isaac Che and Kristen Holmes are also involved in that one. And the last one, if I can do it with one hand, I'll try, is being led by Rayleigh, I didn't write the surname. Does anyone know Rayleigh's surname? Warner, I think it is. Mike Baldwin and Renee Ralph. Okay, that's me.
Hi everyone, I'm Sandra Dovcik. So I would not go through my current projects because it will take a very long time, but what I wanted to say today was just briefly to discuss about what I do as a researcher. So I have 4 current projects, 2 of them funded by Healthway, one is from AHC, one is from Department of Home Affairs. So these 4 projects are basically, there's no title in my slide. So these 4 projects are basically surrounded by this, basically unpacked by this slide. So on this slide, I actually put the title Linguistic Diversity and Discrimination, but for some reason it's missing, I'm sorry. So my research is basically about understanding how people communicate using language, how people, we are different from animals, we are different, we are all humans, so humans are very, specific sort of animals, Homo sapiens, but they talk, they have language, they have communication. So what I look at is basically looking at how people using language make meanings, doing identities, performing identities, and how language is so important for us. So my research is basically about linguistic diversity first. If you look at that brain, so I look at how language can be so diverse as we are human beings. We diversify our language on a daily basis using social media, using digital resources, popular culture resources, everything we have available. So humans use all these available resources to make meanings, and we diversify language. So this is what we have as a human treasure. So we celebrate the linguistic diversity that we have. When we talk about linguistic diversity, especially in for example, in an English-speaking context, we look at migrants' languages. We look at Aboriginal people's language because it's different from a standard Australian English. So that's why linguistic diversity is so important. So we celebrate that. So I celebrate the linguistic diversity, as in my work, I talked a lot about how linguistic diversity is important. But when you talk about linguistic diversity, there's also the part of discrimination, looking at the other side of the coin. So I look at the linguistic discrimination as well, which is in my latest book, Translingual Discrimination. I talk about, even though we celebrate and talk about linguistic diversity on and on and on, in fact, there is always this darker side, which is linguistic discrimination. For example, in an Australian context, if you don't speak an Australian Standard English, for example, if you have a little bit of accent, or if you're a little bit different, then you start getting, all these stereotypes, such as, I say, accentism, linguistic racism, linguistic stereotyping, and so forth. So this is basically about my research, looking at language, humans' language, how people communicate, how language is diversified, and how people are also discriminated. So all my 4 projects are around diversity and discrimination. Yeah, thank you.
It's me. I was expecting to be last. I thought it was going alphabetical. Okay. This was actually kind of an interesting exercise because I hadn't ever thought of my career in terms of a Venn diagram, but it most definitely is. So I started very much as an ESL teacher, now EALD teacher, and a lot of my early work was on second language acquisition and child learners, which led me to look at things around peer interaction and translanguaging and policy and planning around ESL over the years. And so there's been historical reviews. And I've colour-coded things just because that's how my head works. So the green are some of the books that I've published. I haven't listed my journal articles, but they're all in these areas.
from there, it led me to task-based language teaching. And so I've done, again, different age differences in tasks. Tatiana, Senda, Lisa and I did a thing on tasks in the Mongolian school, tasks with Aboriginal students, and Craig Lambert and I published an edited book on tasks in diverse contexts where Tatiana and I had a book. Like everyone here, we seem to have multiple collaborations. Together, they brought me to an ARC linkage, which was around Aboriginal students' transition to life, which you'd think, what's that got to do with it? But a lot of it was really around project-based language learning or tasks with our students, and Tatiana will talk a little bit about that in her slides. The reason I ended up in Indigenous education was very much by accident. People think they have to plan their careers. They don't. Sometimes opportunities arise and you just say yes. It led me to testing theory about second language acquisition, and I tested it with children and with adults, and the natural progression was to look at different contexts, and as Senda's mentioned, looking at how people with languages other than standard Australian English as their first, whether some of the theoretical constructs in second language acquisition apply equally to second dialect acquisition. When I went to the school to do this study, I ended up going, oh, really good idea, but wrong school, and did a completely different study. And that led me to a needs analysis work, which I've done a lot of, which relates to task-based language teaching. I have to say, Carly ended up doing the study I wanted to do as part of her master's. So because of my work in Indigenous education, so I've had an ARC around that, looking at Aboriginal language use, which has been fascinating, looking at the translanguaging that even very young Aboriginal students can use, moving between home language, which could be Creole, could be a traditional language, it could be Aboriginal English, and how in the school they bring that home language into the learning. And yet we have that which absolutely obliterates that richness that these children have. So that was a study I did with Jill Wigglesworth from Melbourne University. Within that, I've, again, like Julian, come across some really interesting people and developed relationships and studies. So we've done a methodology book, and Senda and an Aboriginal friend and colleague of mine, Robin Obba, have done something on ethics and Aboriginal research in the language area. I've also, at the moment, been really involved in a study looking at why Aboriginal students in remote areas haven't returned to school post-COVID. Well, that was what they thought we were going to do, but we've actually looked at attendance and engagement and found, in fact, COVID, yes, it had an impact, but it just made a situation that already existed just worse. And the interesting part of that, one of the strong things that has come out from our participants is the role of home language. So, circles within circles. And because of the ARC that Tatiana will talk about, a colleague and I who had the ARC ended up doing the book called Deadly Futures, looking at the way that Aboriginal students use language but also are taught within schools. So that's kind of like a very brief overview of what I do and where I've gone and some of my projects. So there you go. Oh, and I get to talk about I get to talk about Rod's work, and it was interesting. Recently somebody said, who is Rod and why is he so important? And as the person I was talking to was a basketballer, and sorry to Tony and Lisa who heard this story, I said, look, Rod is like Michael Jordan of SLA, and not only is he like Michael Jordan, he's been playing in the starting five for about 30 years. So he is incredibly important in the field, and his background and interests are really diverse. And like myself, he with child second language acquisition when everybody else was doing adults. But more recently, he's been looking at implicit and explicit knowledge, and I won't go through the study. I think he presented some of this to our group previously. You just need to Google Rod and you can see the length of his publications and different research. And this area in looking at pragmatics of language has been really fascinating journey that he really embarked on since his time at Curtin University.
Oh, I already click on this. I will keep adding things as I talk. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dr. Tatiana Bogachenko, and I'm a senior research officer. And as a qualitative researcher, I place high value on lived experiences, on stories, voice, and especially practical outcomes and opportunities for advocacy based on academic work. And my own work is motivated a lot by my own background as a migrant, a cult, but also English as a foreign language before I came to Australia, and also as Ukrainian. So here in this photo, you can see I'm with my sister and little niece. We're in Ukrainian traditional costumes in Kyiv about 5 years ago. And currently, unfortunately, most of my family and friends are refugees around the world in different countries, including Australia. So I've been engaged in projects with probably most of the people here, and projects with migrant communities, Aboriginal communities, and more recently, refugee education. Here I've got my motto, professional motto, facilitate positive education practices and experience exchange to provide better opportunities for underprivileged and challenged communities around the world. And today I just wanted to focus quickly on some of the outcomes, practical outcomes of the projects that I hope may be interesting, informative, useful, maybe for you or someone you know. So in the LC linkage project that Rhonda mentioned, that we did with the Aboriginal school down south, with the young people, very creative, amazing young people, we co-developed a series of podcasts. And these are podcasts where current students are yarning with past students about their school and post-school experiences of transitioning after school. And I would encourage you to go and check it out. You can find it. It's Wongatha Stories Podcast. I don't know if you can see well here, but it's called Wongatha Stories Podcast. It's available on iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast platforms. And we just, there are 3 series, and the final one just became available maybe a couple of months ago. Also, we co-developed an app, What Do You Reckon app. And this is a resource. It includes links to useful information for post-school transitioning in different areas such as health and well-being, travel, further education, employment, and so on. And you can see the art also was developed by the young people. You can find this on Google, and then save the icon to your home screen to use it as an app. I also work with Associate Professor Greg Gower on the ongoing evaluation of the on-country teacher education program. I'm not sure. Is it? No, it's okay. It's back. Yep. So with this ongoing evaluation, we produce annual reports. We send them to the Department of Education, to the stakeholders to feed back to the development of the program. You can also find our article available in open access in the Australian Journal for Teacher Education. And more are coming. More papers are coming as well. And hopefully they also include some very practical ideas and examples. Rhonda mentioned our work with the Mongol school. So we did the final workshop with them this year, actually. So we worked with the school to do needs analysis and then develop tasks and resources for the children. We also did PD sessions for parents and teachers. And it was really great experience. So I would like to thank my team, Rhonda, Sander, and Lisa for collaboration on this project. also with my colleague from UTS, Dr. Olga Olejnikova, and Professor Gerald Dantas from Population Health at Curtin, we published an advocacy piece in The Conversation when, in the time when even the media did not adequately cover the issue of abrupt end of the humanitarian visa program for people who were under just immense stress, and they were extremely vulnerable. Also, we got HES development grant with the interdisciplinary interstate team to do a pilot project with the displaced people from Ukraine, and we developed reports. Again, we sent it to the community and settlement organizations, and we were invited by the Department of Home Affairs to present on that. And our most recent project with the displaced people from Ukraine, that provided even more opportunities for voice through the photography. So it is Photo Voice project, co-led with Jana Dantas and Lacey Chibis, and Yuan Lim also assisted on this project, and it's a traveling exhibition now. It's traveling around. Also, it's available online, but it was displayed at the School of Education a couple of weeks ago. I would like to thank the school for this opportunity and everybody who supported and provided feedback. We really appreciate that. And we also keep talking about it and presenting. There was a group of health science delegates visiting Curtin that also could hear about it. And I would like to finish, I think it's time, just with the Australian Review of Applied Linguistics journal that we have been editing in the school with Sander, Rhonda, and Julian. It's our final year, but it's available in our library online. So that was another advocacy to make it available for the colleagues and students. So I would like to encourage you to check out the papers. It is applied linguistics, but also a lot of papers. They touch upon issues in general education and migrant education, education for people with disabilities. So yes, thank you very much for your time, for listening. Who's next? Hiroshi.
Hello, everybody. My name is Hiroshi. Just in case if I haven't met you before, yeah, I used to be a school teacher and somehow turned into a university lecturer 20 years ago. And yes, I was teaching in New South Wales, in Victoria and Tasmania before I came to Western Australia. So at the moment I'm a Japanese major coordinator in the School of Education, and then just we are offering Chinese and Japanese programs in this school. We used to offer, many other, language programs. However, just at the moment, we are offering only 2. And today I just want to introduce some of the research I am working at the moment. And actually, as everybody knows, because of the COVID, we were forced to start offering, most courses, most programs online only. And then naturally, just more actually like new staff members, new teaching staff are supposed to be needed. And then, just a few years ago, yes, of course, Chinese and Japanese, sections started offering, our units or programs through online as well as OUA, Open Universities Australia. And, naturally, we have had new, teaching staff members, sessionals, and for the last few years, I have been, sort of like, mentoring and also supervising those new teachers. However, because of the fact that even though they have usually, they are very, have got a long teaching experience at schools, and also very, not only long teaching experience, but also rich, teaching experience. Somehow, while in the middle of the sessions, for example, they are completely stuck or silent in the middle of the session. It's because of the fact that, environment is completely different. And also at the same time, most teachers are not quite familiar with technological side as well. And that reminded me some kind of like a time that I was heavily involved in teacher training sessions. And that kind of situations somehow interestingly let them turn into a total novice teachers. And every semester at the end of every like a teaching time and period, I just quite often had a conversation with them and then trying to just suggest them what to do for the coming lessons, coming semester. And because of that workload, which is not counting that kind of time I spend, I started to realize, oh, that's an interesting point, and then that's something I can possibly investigate, write a paper, and after completing that paper, I can possibly show that paper to those new coming teachers, which may save my time for the future. And that's the kind of like a motivation I started investigating my current paper. The title is, sorry, I cannot read it. Yeah, based on that, narratives of that, like a new teachers, what kind of like, issues they are encountering, how they can possibly cope with those, issues, and at the same time, what kind of aspects they can possibly use for the coming semesters. And then I am going to just present that paper at the new, new coming conference in November this year, which I'm, looking forward to it. And also for the last couple of years, I have been involved in some kind of like work with a professor in Japan regarding JET program, Japan Exchange Teaching Program. That's what it stands for. And the JET program is one of the kind of like a biggest sort of like recruiting sort of like, programs for English language teachers mainly, from all over the world. And it was established in 1987. And since then, more than 77,000 people participated in the program from 78 countries in the world. And there are lots of issues there because of the fact that their eligibility to apply for that program is simply, as long as they have got a university degree, they can participate. That's also the issue. But it's a time, I believe, it's a time for them to realize that, quality rather than quantity, as well as quantity, should be discussed from now on. Because nearly, in 3 years, they are, I guess, thinking about organizing a big, huge sort of like anniversary sort of event once again, which Japan like. And so that's something, I just want to, work with, and then trying to just get some kind of ideas based on the semantic research. And that's what I have been doing for the last couple of years, and also for the next couple of years as well. I'm working with that issue. And also, lastly, just simply next year, ASAA conference is going to be held at Curtin University, and then I'm working as a kind of like a committee members with Lisa next to me, and that'd be good if you could possibly, join that conference as well. Thank you.
I'm actually going to stand and come up to this part of the room because all the audience is most of the audience is here, and just for a change. Do I have to stay in the camera? Where does it stop? The screen? I'm blocking my own screen. So I'm Lisa Ludden. I've been at Curtin University about a little over 2 years. In the past 1 year, my time has mostly been hijacked by being the Dean International for the Faculty of Humanities. So research activity has seen a little bit of a hit, but before I was in Curtin, I was at the University of Sydney for 2.5 years, before that in Hong Kong U for 9 years, before that Amsterdam, and before that Singapore, which is where I'm originally from. Research has been centered around Asia in general. Sorry, I'm blocking my own screen for people, so I'm going to stand here instead. Sorry, guys. I work in... No, I like to stand. I work in areas of
language contact and evolution in multilingual contexts, and mostly looking, well, one of the areas looking at new varieties of English in contact, looking at Singapore English, Hong Kong English, and so on. Minority and endangered language communities as well, looking at language shift, endangerment, revitalization, and so on, and have done work in urban areas, such as the Peranakan community in Singapore, as well as in urban and more rural peripheral areas, such as looking at the Malay communities in Sri Lanka, and also looking at sociolinguistics of globalization, mobility, computer-mediated communication, and so on, but always looking at the impact on contact dynamics, as well as implications for policy, education, and so on. In the book covers, you see there are sort of things over the years that I've put out which look at languages in contact from an Asian perspective. Also things like citizenship, linguistic citizenship, as well as work on Englishes in Asia and implications for education and policy. Over the years, I've really found that it's very important to communicate what we do, not just to other academics in academic contexts, but to non-academics, to the public at large. I continue to be really sort of impressed and humbled by all the work that my colleagues here in this cluster do in terms of working with communities, writing for the conversation, putting things, out there that are available to the non-academic, and that's something that I've tried to do in small ways over the years I've done work in. So on the bottom left-hand corner of the slide, that's something I did in Hong Kong, looking at minority communities in Hong Kong, so getting our undergraduate students as part of one of the course assessments to work on or document the language situations of minority communities in Hong Kong. The majority of students in Hong Kong are Cantonese dominant, Chinese backgrounds, but there are huge numbers of people from South Asia, Philippines, Indonesia, and so on. This was early 2000s, mid 2000s, when I got this, in the 2010s, when I got my students to embark on this assessment, they were all terribly, terribly apprehensive. Many actually engaged communities outside of their own dominant Cantonese ones. So it was quite an interesting experience. In any case, they all went out and did projects, lots of really fantastic work, and that was all brought together in a kind of online portal, linguisticminorities.hongkong, which is there in the middle, which documented these minority communities. And this was also featured on the left-hand side in Time Out Hong Kong. So the work on minorities was featured there. So, this is something that I think is really important to do. I'm really glad when I came over to the school and this cluster that I found some areas. I continue my work focusing on Asia in general, but I found various dimensions on which to connect with colleagues. Some of them have been mentioned already. Some of the work in the Mongolian School and Mongolian Project, thanks to my colleagues for including me in that, but also just in general, issues about minority communities, about indigenous languages, and going beyond Australian indigenous languages, with capital I, but also thinking about the International Decade for Indigenous Languages, which is happening now, 2022 to 2032. We're in the middle of that. And thinking about all these issues sort of got me to work with Tony and Carly on some of these things, and which resulted in a conversation article and quite a bit of media attention as well during that time. Anyway, just to end off, a few happenings, some publications happening on in academic outlets. But also I continue to write Language Matters column for the South China Morning Post. That's Hong Kong mainstream newspaper, but it's a Sunday magazine that comes out in print as well as online. Since 2016, I've been doing that. And it comes out fortnightly, which has really taught me, and it's really taught me a lesson on deadlines which can't be extended for months and months on end, like some academic deadlines. It's like you file your column or it doesn't get published at all. and crunching it to 400 words, saying what you really want in just 400 words. That's been a great exercise for me. But it's again about, talking about anything to do with language for the public. Two more things I just want to mention, that in wearing my other hat as Dean International for the faculty, I'm actually doing an Indigenous Global Mobility project for Global Curtin, and if I can talk further about, I'm just mindful of time. If you're interested, we can speak about this further. Yeah, exactly. Further and after beyond this. And one other huge project on our plate is, of course, in addition to the Asia Studies Conference, is the Sociolinguistics Symposium, the largest sociolinguistics gathering internationally. And it's the first time it's coming to Australia, and we're hosting that next June here at Curtin. So put that on your radars as well. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa. Has anyone got the flipper thing? Oh, because I think we have to do... Oh, she's put it on... okay. So this is Dr. Chen Gong, who's on academic study program at the moment, so couldn't be here. But she sent her slides along. I didn't know they were going to be... that I would have to talk to each one. So I'm just going to flick them all up, I think. So this is one of the things that Chen is working on. She's very much into digital storytelling, and she has a colleague, as you can see. I can't remember her first name, but her surname is Zhang, who she works with a lot. She's also looking at emotion, and I think that's with our own Craig Lambert and her PhD student that she's currently working with as well. Oh, you're the PhD, so there you go. Your final moment of glory has just arrived. But unfortunately, you haven't got an initial, you're just Miller. So, yeah. Okay, and so with these, if you see anything that strikes a chord with you, even though Chen's on ASP, I'm sure she'll be more than happy to talk with you further. Or is it John? Paul. Paul, sorry. Will also be willing to speak with you as well, I'm sure. And she's also got a funded project with Senda and Tatiana, looking at the building resilience of young migrant refugee background population in WA, affected by a loss of sense of belonging through autoethnography. Okay, and finally, Yuko also couldn't be here, but she sent this slide along. I don't know if I need to read it out. I'll maybe just give you a few minutes just to have a look at what she's involved in. She's very much into semantics, as you can see, because that word comes up quite a bit. A few of us were at the International Pragmatics Association conference just a few weeks ago, and Yuko was one of them. Chen was there, I was there, Senda was there. Was anyone else there? And so we all shared this sense of being involved in sociolinguistics, pragmatics, and in particular semantics for Yuko. Okay, shall we finish there? Yeah, okay, let's finish there, and if people have questions or things they want to ask us. Is there a finish? Oh, yes. Anyone want to ask any questions? You might need the mic if you do. Yeah, I think. That's right. Could you just pass it to the next?
Will do. My first question is for Carly. And when you mentioned critical race theory, I wondered what the impact was of the politicalisation of it in the US on your research and your perspectives.
I can probably be quite quick. I just ignored that and and did it. In Australia, I actually drew on Nikki Moody's work from the University of Melbourne. So she's got decolonising race theory. So she draws on Brayboy's critical tribal race theory and brings together some of that. And so I guess it was more focused on an Indigenous context as well as migrant populations. So looking at both. And I guess Nikki Moody really draws out, also drawing on Wolf's settler colonialism and how that's been used to, I guess, erase Indigenous sovereignty in Australia and how that's perpetuated through the schooling system. Does that answer your question?
Can I add to that, Carly?
Yeah.
So about the critical race theory, it's been led by some of these lawyers in Harvard and, all these Ivy League university scholars in the U.S., and it's heavily based on Black African American experience. So it's very much heavily North American experience theory, which doesn't actually work in an Australian context, in my opinion. Because when we talk about Indigenous people, Aboriginal people, and migrants, it's really different from U.S. context. So when, the reviewers start saying, oh, you're using critical race theory, this and that, and start critiquing that, I would often say it's actually very different in Australia. So, so it's not, it doesn't really, context is different. So.
Back to Audrey.
Whoever has the question.
Go, Audrey. Yeah.
Somebody might.
Okay, sorry.
My next one was to Senda. When you talk about language and looking at the impact of language, I was wondering about the cultural element of gesture and nonverbal communication. So, for example, an intonation that goes up at the end of a sentence in some cultures is a question, in other cultures it's not, it's just how you end it. Or in a gesture, so some gestures are quite acceptable in some cultures and in other cultures they're not. How do you think that might tie in around language and communication?
Oh, thanks, Audrey. That's my favorite question. I think it's very important. We call it paralinguistic resources in applied linguistics. So when we look at the language is not just some sort of category, because humans call it Japanese, Mongolian, English. We categorize them. It's an ideology, human ideology. But in fact, when the Homo sapiens first started, we started with the gesture, we started with the signs, and then we developed language, right? So it's very important, especially in different cultures. In Mongolian culture, gesture is one of the part of the bigger picture if you want to understand the communication. So is Aboriginal culture. Right, okay.
I was going to say, if you ever want to see it done brilliantly, Google Stephen Oliver, no relation, having a whole conversation through gestures in the Aboriginal context. And it remains, and Tatiana and I saw that very often at Wongatha, and Carly could probably speak more, but gesture is incredibly important, and it's often very subtle. So in a classroom, I once saw the kids all nodding and agreeing with the teacher, and behind the back crossing it out, saying, no, we actually don't agree with this at all. So, yeah, very powerful.
Very powerful, important part of communication. We can't separate them. We need to look at them together.
Sorry. This one's for Rhonda, but also in terms of translanguaging, but also in terms of cold. I wonder if the prevalence of a deficit model for people who don't speak English in an English context has a lot to answer for, and that could we totally reposition it if we looked at it as, and I don't know what the opposite would be to deficit, an additive model, something that looked at valuing what they add.
See, that's my favourite question, Senda, and I think Carly could probably answer better than I, but absolutely the deficit construction, particularly of those who have Aboriginal English as their first dialect, very much is this deficit model. It negates the whole home language, and yet that's such a rich resource that we should be considering. So tick, definitely, Audrey, and I don't know what we do to address that, but keep on saying it. And so people who obviously much braver than I, Carly, in our paper that around Stop Measuring Black Kids with a White Stick came, a direct quote from one of our on-country students, but talking about this notion that plan, I mean, how ridiculous. I would like to take those people who write those questions out on a bushwalk and ask them to explain something in Aboriginal English and say, how well did you do? Explain what you do with this tree, because I've seen 5-year-olds do it in Aboriginal English brilliantly, and yet they're judged on something like going to the cinema, which they would never have seen. So it's not just a language test, it's a cultural test. Tony.
Winding it up.
I don't know, but there's no better from you.
Okay, I think we will wind it up then. Thank you all for coming. I hope you took something away from it. I'm sorry we probably gabbled a little bit because we were on a strict timing regime to get through, but I'm sure everyone here would agree with me. If you have further questions or you want to connect in any way about any of the projects, if you feel there's something you have in common and want to connect, then we'll all be happy to hear from you at any point, providing we're not on leave. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, right? Thank you for coming.
Did it get recorded? It's recorded. Oh, still recorded.
Where's the always?
I guess we'll see on the recording.
No, but